Come in. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I was just hyping myself up. It's one of those mornings where I'm pumped. I'm ready. I'm excited. But today, I don't know if you've ever wondered about defying the odds and revealing the dark side of drug addiction and then having some redemption. But I have. So that's what we're doing on today's show. So it's time to wake up the sleeping giant. Buckle up. I love how you hit live as I'm like,
I know, right in the middle of it, right? Like right. Get to the point. Yeah, bam.
We're live. Good morning, Giants.
That's how we roll.
Yeah. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I am Ryan Morris, co-host and co-creator of Wake Up with Giants TV, Tribe of Giants on Facebook, 12 Journeys Coaching, and a bunch of other cool stuff. Because of Mr. Nicholas T. Smith. He is the author of The Giants and the Smalls, this beautiful book here. Boom. You can find a copy on Amazon. This one. giantsandthesmalls.com. Don't go with a knockoff of this. This is the original. There is no knockoffs.
I don't think there is, but that would be rad.
Don't do it. You don't want generic in this scenario.
Right.
So go to 12journeyscoaching.com. Check us out. We've got so much great content, videos galore, and more being added every week. So go there, check it out. You can find just about anything that you need to feel supported, loved, cared about. You can laugh with us. You can cry with us. You can do all the things. 12journeys.com, my12journeys.com.
Yep, perfect.
You know
just
what?
Added an application in there too, an AI application for those that love AI, that actually will navigate your toughest challenges, thoughts, emotions, and actions with you in a conversational format, much like a coach would. And it uses the most up-to-date information to help you work through that. It's powerful. I think it's the best app that I've created so far.
Have you, is that part of that TikTok, the series that you created?
It's not, because that's one. I'll probably do a few more videos on it, but This thing's rad.
It is intense. Watching that stuff and the power of AI, that you would have no idea that it could coach you through some amazing things. It's pretty
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, and in fact, it might do better than I might do with you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty good at what I do.
I agree with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. No, it's good though, but it's free. If you go to my12journeys.com and sign up for a free account, we've got exclusive content in there for you. So make sure you do that. I don't know why anybody would wait. There's no cost, and it's powerful.
Free 99. You got the 5-finger discount at the moment.
Yeah, take advantage of it.
So much value inside of there. Also, one more thing too. I wanted to wish Capri a happy birthday. That's Nick's daughter.
Yeah.
She's freaking amazing, and it's her birthday today. And I think she's like 21 or something. She's growing up.
She's got to be. I mean, she's been around forever.
she's forever.
She's 12.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She's already more mature than I am, so that's fine. The other thing too, this is just a real quick, selfless, shameless plug, is Ryan wrote a chapter in a book, and
yes, plug away.
It's going to look like that right there. It's a journey of riches. This one's called Facing Your Fears. Ours is Living the Paradigm of Kindness. So if you can find that on Amazon, that would be fantastic.
Will you drop the link in here in the comments?
I'd love to. It's just about kindness, and that's one of my favorite topics. So it wasn't that hard to write about kindness. So apparently I have a little bit of an author bone inside of me.
It's in there. in there. Let's get to it. Should we introduce our guest?
I would love to. Let's do it.
All right. We've got an incredible guest. In this episode of Wake Up with Giants TV, we are spotlighting Sean Hendricks, whose story is a testament of overcoming adversity and inspiring change. So, Sean's journey from battling drug addiction and facing imprisonment to becoming a guiding figure for others in similar struggles highlights the essence of human resilience and personal evolution. His experiences have not only shaped him into a person dedicated to supporting others, but also emphasizes the significance of perseverance and self-improvement. With nearly 2 decades of marriage to Julie Hendricks and a life centered around their 3 children, Sean exemplifies the role of a family man who credits his loved ones as his foundation and motivation for transformation. That's some rhyming right there. I like that. Foundation, motivation, transformation. So in this episode, we're going to dive into Sean's challenges that have propelled him into a mission of empowerment, sharing lessons learned and strategies, not just for surviving, but for thriving. Sean, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning,
Man,
brother.
Good to have you here. We're going to dive into your journey. We have a framework that we can use. There's no wrong way to do this, and our goal is to really draw out of you your story as an inspiration for those that are listening. If we could start out, before any of this ever happened, before life got a hold of you, tell us about your development a little bit. Tell us about what it was like to grow up and what your world was like, and if that had any impact on the way everything played out.
Well, definitely the way I was raised had a huge impact on the way things turned out. Early on, as far as I can remember, I used to hear my parents fighting all the time, and there'd be screaming and a little bit of fighting. But as I got older, I used to run in there and get in between my mom and dad and tell stop fighting type of thing. But as time went by, I realized that, my dad was just trying to get out of the house, and there could have been way better ways to do that. But, as a little kid, you think that's normal. You think behind every closed door, this is going on. But, I didn't, after a while, I didn't really start going in there to stop the fight. I just let it play out. And, because it seemed like normal. My dad would just, push her around, put on his cowboy boots and just walk out the door and come back the next day and everything would be fine, but, it seemed normal. And then, as my dad was an iron worker, so we moved around a lot to different states. And so, I'd be doing really good in school. And then before you know it, we'd move to another state and they'd be on another subject. And I didn't know what the heck was going on, and who wants to be the only kid in school to raise their hand like, I don't know anything. So before you know it, I started getting further behind in school, and then, 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock would roll around and I'd be roaming the streets as much as I'd want. And you'd hear the parents say, hey, Chris, it's time to come home and, brush your teeth and get ready for school. I never heard that. I would just come home 2 o'clock in the morning. My parents were still not home, so, and, there'd be times where they'd be gone for, a couple weeks, a month. We would have no food. It was tough.
Man, I think of the intensity of some of these developmental experiences, right? That my situation wasn't like that, but I can relate to some of the food things and some of the neglect, right? But we tend to develop coping strategies to be able to handle that really early on, right? Because it's so intense. And we haven't been really taught how to manage it yet, right? So we come up with our own strategies, and sometimes, those strategies, they feel good in the moment and they help us navigate that and get through, but long term, they don't end up being super beneficial, right? And a lot of times we get into our adulthood and we're looking at it going, man, where did this even come from? We've got these same patterns and behaviors, and we're sitting here going, I don't even know where this started, but I know it's been around a long time. Can you speak to some of your strategies for coping with that intensity? And am I accurate? Am I off base here with what I'm saying?
No, as grown up, today, have my kids, this a long time ago, if I was going to have a family, I was going to make sure that nothing like that was ever going to happen. You know, there was never going to be any alcohol in my house. You know, I didn't want to ever see my kids, you know, see me and my wife argue. It's been a journey, you know, as time goes by, you know, trying to teach your kids what you learned and what you don't want them to go through.
That's
Yeah.
actually really awesome that you were able to do that, because um, you don't know what you weren't you weren't modeled coping skills, but yet you took what you saw as things you didn't want, and then made almost like an internal vow to, I'm not going to have that in my life when I have the option. You know, when it's my turn, I'm going to change everything. But I could also imagine that it would be pretty difficult. Maybe some grief. I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But for me, it would be like I didn't get a childhood, a normal childhood, and longing for, almost like, for somebody to almost get mad at me and tell me I'm late for coming in for dinner, or to go to bed on time, or to do my homework. And you're I mean, Nick was raised a little bit like this, a little bit feral in that regard, and you almost long for that love, or something that you didn't have, you know, or
Yeah.
could.
You
So
know,
my hat's off to you for like seeing that for what it is at such a young age, and then also deciding that's not going to be part of my life. Because for a lot of people, they create these protections at a young age, and then they carry those way deep into adulthood, and now they're no longer serving them. And I don't know if there was a point where some of those weren't serving you and you woke up, and then maybe part of that's your drug addiction story. But what are your thoughts on some of that?
well, you know, growing up, you never know what was, you know, right or wrong, you know, when you're just a little kid. I know in the neighborhood, you know, people across the street, you know, their parents are really nice. And, you know, I didn't know they were trying to keep me over their house and feed me, because they knew what was going on across the street was crazy, you know. There'd be times where, you know, I'd be playing baseball and we were the city champs going all the way, you know, never lost a baseball game. And last game we win. My parents were never there, you know, and sometimes no matter what, you always knew that they weren't going to be there, but you always kind of looked up in the stands, waiting for them, just like, man, I hope they show up this time, you know, and they just never did. And through my drug addiction, you know, you know, never once when I was a kid growing up, did I think, well, okay, if I have kids, I want it to be different, you know. As time went on, you know, you just realize, man, I learned a lot, you know, through my drug addiction. And of course, once I got help, that, you know, man, things were just so wrong. And, you know, it's almost, it's time to break those chains, you know, and do something different.
Sean, I've got a question around addiction. You know, I think there are some ideas around how addiction comes about, and looking at the neurobiology of, you know, how the brain works is that it optimizes repeated patterns. So whatever you repeatedly do becomes optimized. But the things that we repeatedly do are the things that we tend to use as coping mechanisms. And then those help soften the pain of whatever's going on. So there are our self-medication, so to speak, of whatever's going on in our world. And then they feel good, right? And they create that hit of dopamine and whatever else might come from it. But that feeling good is that one thing in our lives. And I could see some things, some patterns in my life where that thing that felt good became optimized and efficient by the brain, right? That over time it started to become what could be labeled as an addiction, right? It's an automated behavior that now tends to act before you can even think about it. But it started out, I can imagine, you know, with your addiction, that it wasn't the addiction, it was what you're trying to cope with. Is that accurate? And then it turned into an addiction, or can you help me through that?
Yeah. So, man, so when growing up, you know, I never really did. I mean, I maybe smoked marijuana here and there at the parties. I never did drink, you know, just being around that all the time. I realized I didn't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was a time that, I ended up losing my father.
Mm.
And once I lost my father, I didn't really deal with that because, there was, growing up in my family, there was never, talk about your feelings, or, if my parents did something really bad, if you try to bring that up the next day, they would just, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. So after my dad passed away, I didn't talk about it, man. Those feelings were all suppressed. And it's a lot of baggage on my baggage I was carrying, which I didn't know at the time.
Mm.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. And before you know it, things I didn't do, drinking, I started drinking a lot. And before you know it, you start meeting, a lot of good people when you're drinking. And before you know it, those good people are doing drugs and you start doing it. And I just started, once I started doing those drugs, it helped, I thought, just like the dopamine levels, and, I didn't have to deal with it. It felt, I didn't really have to deal with those problems that were hurting. I didn't even think about it because I was so numbed out. And that went on for, a long time. Of course, as you know, I ended up going to prison there for a while. But the drug issue, methamphetamines, what doesn't matter what it is, meth, heroin, or whatever, I did it all. It's all bad. But, at the time, because you don't know how to cope with those situations, it's replaced with, what you think's helping you.
Does it, so I'm thinking of the rat park experiment. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
So there was a study done where they hooked rats, they isolated them and then hooked them on heroin. The only thing available to them was food, water, and heroin. And a lot of these rats, because they were isolated, would go and just get on the heroin, right? It was the only thing that felt good. But then they did a separate study where they built a whole community for rats, right? There was food, water, heroin still available in the community, but there was community. There was acceptance into the community. And I know these aren't humans, right? But there was inside of that community, not a single rat got addicted to the heroin, didn't even go for it because they had that connection. I think a lot of times when it comes to addiction, there can be this isolation and this social rejection where it makes it even harder to come out of it. And it's not that there's a social responsibility for us to pull you out of it, but there tends to be this rejection of people that are in addiction, where they're almost outcast, and I can imagine that causes its own set of discomfort that pushes you back to the thing that brings you comfort. Is that fairly close?
Yeah, that's very close.
Yeah.
Very much so, and never more true as time went on, and I got in trouble and I ended up going to prison, just like, the story you're talking about, that was me in prison, in that social experiment.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean?
Well, you think you go to prison, there'd be no drugs.
Right.
And, you're given a place to sleep. You're given, 3 meals a day, and you can't go outside these gates. But I mean, there's all the drugs you'd ever want in there. You got the methamphetamines, you got the heroin, you name it, you have it all. And it, in a way, thinking about it now, the correctional officers knows what's going on and all that stuff. But it was like a bad social experiment, and you just had to get through it.
Yeah. And what did that wake you up to? I mean, I can imagine that prison would be an absolute wake up call for some people. I see that it's not for others, but for some people, it becomes this wake up of, man, I've got some things going on here that put me here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not here by accident. And it's not ideal. Is that accurate? Did you have a wake up call when that happened, or was it at some other point that you had that wake up call?
So the wake up call, I wish I could say going to prison was that wake up call,
Yeah.
But when you don't talk about what's going on, it's really hard to have that wake up call. You always hear, when is that person going to hit bottom, and you think me going to prison would have been hitting bottom, but man, I was going through a lot of crap, never got over that situation with my dad. And then of course put me in prison, and there's all those drugs. It was probably 7 years in prison, and it was, it's funny is, when I finally got out, they show me these books, or files, and here's a guy that's been here 20 years, and or da da da. He goes, my file was huge, and he goes, you spent so much time in the hole just because of drugs,
Wow.
because it's almost like I had a siren. You get high and you go in the hole for 15 days, and luckily I'm not in the nut, kind of crazy because of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until they transferred me to all these prisons, and they finally said, Sean, no prison wants you because wherever you go, there's a drug problem. Because I found a way to get it one way or another. And do you think you have a drug problem? And I said, yes. No one's ever asked me that the whole time.
Wow.
When I was in prison. You think that would be different?
I don't want to like make light of it too much, but like I think it's kind of cool. You were setting records in prisons. I mean, that's cool. I mean, that's pretty resilient.
I want to hang on that question though, because that wake up question, right? Do you have a drug problem? This is a side topic here, but I want to pull it back in. There's a lady that I know that works with kids who are troubled, who are suicidal. And one of the most powerful questions they ask is, are you thinking of harming yourself? Right. And that question gets that person to think about it. They found an 80% reduction in suicide rates by that one question alone. And it's amazing the power of questions. When somebody asks you, do you have a drug problem? And you're like, yeah. And it becomes a wake up call. It's amazing. Such a simple question can become such an impactful thing in your life. Can you share a little bit more about what happened after that question?
So of course I said, yeah, I have a drug problem. I mean, at that time when they transferred me from one prison to another, I was in the hole for say 6 months because, like I said, they didn't know where to put me. Well, there was a drug program that had started. So when they asked me, I said, yes. He goes, well, there's a drug program we're going to send you to, but if you screw up, you're right back where you're at right now.
Yeah.
And so, of course, a week later, here I am in this drug program. And it was a drug program that was meant for people who were just about ready to get out of prison. And I wasn't, man. I had a little bit of time before I got out.
Yeah.
But my sister, family, they, even though they didn't want me in that program, they weren't going to have me. My sister, huge, she played a big part while I was in there. But man, she just was that person that, what I couldn't do out there, she did out there, making those phone calls. My brother needs help. My brother needs help. So when they did finally accept me in that program, and I'm sitting there listening, all these guys, and they have the 12 steps, NA and AA. And I'm sitting there. At first, I'm thinking, man, I'm just going to sit here until I can get the balls rolling and get some drugs in here. But a couple of days of listening to that, I'm thinking to myself, I got a problem. For the first time, here I am sitting in prison, listening to all these guys talk about drugs. And I just thought to myself, man, I have that problem. And if I don't do something today, this is where I'm going to stay the rest of my life, because no matter what, being in there as long as I was, which was 14 years, you see a lot of people get out and come back in. And they were all friends of mine, but they would come back in after doing 6 years or something like that. And they'd come back 6 months later and they, man, that was the best time I ever had out there. And I'm thinking, I just want to get out and stay out. So I didn't want to be that revolving door. So the first time in my life, I said, I'm going to give it 100%. Whatever this is that they're giving to me, I'm going to do 100% and give it my best try.
That's amazing. That quote by Hugh, the issues were still the problem. Once he stopped drugging and drinking, the issues were still the problem. Like, it doesn't seem like the drugs are the issue. They can become the challenge because now you're facing that versus the real issues. But there's probably still that facing of the issues, the challenges that were really behind all of this. Can you share a little bit about that? I mean, getting into the revolving door, like overcoming the drugs, is probably just one facet of it.
So, so while I was in that program, there's, being raised in an alcoholic family, as I got older, I would sleep on the couch downstairs because, I just learned, hold my mom back, let my dad put on his cowboy boots and get out of the house. And so that's why I slept on the couch. I didn't sleep in my bedroom upstairs, because if I slept downstairs, I'd be woken up. One night that didn't happen. I go pick up my mom from the bar. I bring her home. Of course, when my dad's not home, I get everything. The ashtrays thrown at me and da da da. Before you know it, she finally goes to bed, which was kind of weird. She goes to bed, and man, I was just wore out, and I ended up going upstairs. Well, when I woke up that morning, she was screaming, just crazy. Anyways, my dad ended up losing his life from an argument. That'd probably be another story. But man, I blame myself as a kid because, if I would have slept on the couch, I would have been able to stop that fight like always, and my dad would still be alive. But unfortunately, I sat there and held my dad while he passed away. Ambulance come, da da da, and that's when I just went off the record. So fast forward while I was in prison on the drugs. Of course, there's always that underlying problem. It just wasn't the drugs, it was all that, me blaming myself for my dad's death and why I was in prison. And so going through all this, I remember this lady, her name was Judith Ricketts. She ran the program, and you always have that affirmation, you have to tell every time you go around the circle. And she asked, "Is that your information you say all the time?" And I said, "Yeah." And it had everything to go around guilt and shame, And she says, "Look, you're gonna participate in this exercise that we're gonna have." At that time, I didn't really talk too much in that program. It was just really hard, and because you realize I didn't know talking about your problems would actually help. And so she says,
well, and you weren't taught to share your feelings either. You were taught
right,
to stuff them or deal with them in other ways, screaming,
exactly,
yelling, fighting, drinking, drugs, those kinds of things.
yeah.
So this is all new.
Yeah, and so she says, "You're going to go stand outside the door until I come get you." And she was only like 5 foot tall, man, but she was mean. So I went out and stood outside, of this door. You got to remember, this isn't like in a prison. Like you're around all these guys, and you feel like you have to portray someone that you're not, And so I went and stood at this door for about 15 minutes, and she finally came and got me. And she said, "Look, when you come back in, you're going to go around each individual, and you're going to tell them why you feel guilt, And when they do that, they're going to hand you something, And at first, I was just like, I feel guilty because, I said this to my mom or whatever. But when there's 20 people in the group, all that bullshit will go out the door. You're going to get to what you feel guilty about, and you don't want to cry in front of these people. But as time went by, I got like I didn't know what else to say. I felt guilty about, so I started, man, I felt guilty, with the situation with my dad, and it just went on and on. And somebody would hand me a pen, somebody hand me a pen of papers. This one guy would hand me a chair for my guilt. And by the time I walked around all 20 people, I mean, I was holding 3 or 4 chairs and this so much. And I walked around to this lady and she goes, "Sean, what do you need to do with all this guilt?" And, I said, "Put it down." "No," "You can put anything down. What do you need to do with this guilt?" I get emotional thinking about it, but, it just came over me, man. I need to let it go. And so anyways, I said those words and just let it go. And man, it just felt like this huge, huge weight just came off my shoulders. And that right there was the turning point of the change in my life. And from that point on, everything just, man, I talked about everything. Anything that bothered me, I talked about it, and that lady just from that one exercise, put all my guards down, and all that crap that I've been carrying around for all those decades was gone. I let it go. And that was a change for me.
Sean, I want to honor you first for opening up the way you are, because I get that this is deeply personal, and the experiences that you've had, I was trying to look for a quote that would even come close to acknowledging what you're experiencing here is, I can't even imagine, going back in time, if I were to be you back when those experiences were happening, I wonder how I would have handled it. would I have done as well? Would I have done the same things? Would I have done worse? Right? I don't know. Like, it's impossible to know, but you can see the influence of these experiences on your life. And then to carry the guilt and the shame. And I think this is a big problem that we have for ourselves. I feel like we guilt ourselves and we're shamed by others, right? We carry the guilt on our own, and then we feel the shame that we think others have for us, right? And then that keeps us from really addressing the issue, which is to really just let things go and move on. And it's hard to do that. So instead of moving on, we numb out and we close off and we bottle it all up. And then next thing you know, you're doing things where you've lost your freedom or you've lost other things, right?
Yeah.
I think
Like,
too, sometimes
yeah.
people don't know that they can just let it go.
Yeah.
Like that the thought never really crosses your mind. It's like you're just tossing in these things and carrying it all around, and then somebody's like, "Hey, why are you holding on to this all this stuff? The story of who you were is not who you have to be. At any point in time, you could just let it go."
Yeah.
But what's the
But
distinction there,
yeah,
right?
but
Between let it
getting
go and
there,
put it down. Like, I wonder
Right.
about that.
Yeah. Well, from that program. So, her name is Judith Ricketts that did that exercise, and I ended up seeing this psychologist. His name is Bob Brandenburg. And no matter what, as we go through life, sometimes, well, for me, man, I just thought I was just a bad person, and if you can sit there and write down, what you think maybe be bad about yourself and what's good about yourself, I guarantee you the good's going to outweigh the bad, so you're really not that bad of a person. And if you're really not that bad of a person and you want to become that better person, you just got to go through the steps. And just like I said, you not put it down, but let it go and go through the steps. My brother-in-law out in Brigham City, they do this group thing with these kids that are pretty much on their last leg before they go to prison. And, they asked me to go out there and speak one time, and so I go out there and talk to these kids. You got some of them that want to pay attention, they're laughing. And it kind of reminded me as a kid, when those kids or those people used to come to the school, and talk about drugs. Well, I was up up on the bleachers laughing, playing around because I was getting high at that time, and you didn't want to listen to it, and if I would have listened to it, that's really comes down to it. You got to be willing to listen. And if you're not willing to listen, you're never, ever going to learn anything, and talking with these kids, it's really hard for me not to tell my story and get emotional, because, it was just a really tough time in my life. And no matter what, because I don't never talk too much, whenever I do open up, it is what it is. I get emotional because it's a sad thing for me. And when I'm talking to these kids and I show that emotion, it lets that guard down for them. But what I learned is you're only as sick as your secrets. And if you don't talk about your secrets, you're just going to be sick the rest of your life. And you got to talk about it, because you're never going to move forward without doing that.
Well, that's powerful. Brian, thoughts on that? You're only as sick as your secrets. Do you have some thoughts around that?
Yeah, and I was also thinking about the distinction that you mentioned about just letting it go or setting it down. Setting it down gives you the option just to pick it right back up again, type of a thing in my mind. The letting it go is really truly, sending it down the road, send it packing. It's gone, it's done.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that's a better, I don't know, fresh start for your brain, for your soul, for your heart. So Al, thanks for popping on. Al's a great friend and runs the other side of addiction, so he can understand a lot of this stuff. And same with Hugh, has been through addiction and things like that. But I don't know. That was what was on my mind, before you talked about that other stuff. Just sitting here thinking about, my life. I haven't had to deal with heavy addiction and some of those things that you experience, but I'm just pulling in what I can relate to and what I've been through, and then going, yeah, like there was a whole bunch of things that I held on to. I look back and I'm like, why? Like I had the choice, and I did at points shame myself and guilt myself for holding on to it. And then I had a buddy who gave me a bracelet that said "Let it go." It was an Anna and Elsa bracelet from the movie Frozen. It was so simple and kind of girly and a little kidsy, but it was this simple little metaphor, from that movie. Let it go, let it go,
Right.
and I did, and now I can talk about it. I get emotional too, and that's okay. That's okay. I mean, there's feelings and there's stuff there, man. I love that. It helps people relate because you're human and that you've gone through stuff that have created who you are now, and you've also added to it and let go of a lot of these things, and you're probably still learning some letting go, and it's I would imagine that it's getting easier and easier and easier in your life as stuff comes up. You can let that stuff go. Like, why am I holding this? You look down, you're like, what? Why am I holding this thing? Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Real quick, when Secrets are Secrets and letting it go, talking to these kids, when I leave there, you don't know because, you'll say, yeah, these kids are really, they don't talk to their counselors or whatever, and I ended up doing a video not long after that on Facebook, and this is how it kind of came about. But, hearing that these kids are going to the counselors and talking to them, like, hey, I want to talk about this. And, it really did something to me, like, holy crap, and because all this time I've been out of prison, 14 years in there, 20 plus years clean, people around me, I hear them going through their problems and addiction or whatever. But for me to talk about that, then everybody's got to know about me, that I did, went to prison and all that. And that's something that, I never wanted, just because people are judgmental, you're free and, you don't want doors closed in your face or whatever. But it made me realize that, man, when I got out of prison, I was getting doors closed in my face all the time. It was hard for me to find a job. But, you just got to keep on going to that next one until you keep on getting that no until you get that yes, and because you got that yes, 20 other doors freaking open for you. But the friend of mine that I did prison with, he had gotten out and I helped him. And man, we got high a long time out there in prison. And, about being strong and I was going to go off on left track there, but
Okay.
You become stronger as you go, telling your story.
Sure.
And like for my wife, if something's bothering me or something like that, you can stuff it and put it down. But just like anything, if you put it down, you don't deal with it, it's just going to get bigger till it blows up.
Yeah. Can we speak to that a little bit? Because that having somebody to talk to, right? Whether it's a therapist, a partner, a coach, a friend, being able to express, Edith Eger talks about expression as the opposite of depression. And if you don't know who she is, she was a survivor of concentration camp. Right. And one of the things with human emotions is a lot of times we're taught not to express these. I was told as a kid, stop crying, go in the other room until you're done crying, until you deal with this, and then come back and you can be a part of our little society here called the family. Right. Or whatever it looks like. It's like you go deal with your emotions, you can come back. But then when you do come back after you've had that experience, then you're not accepted. You're judged as something different because you had the experience. And so it's never a safe space. And so having that safe space to open up and express, whether that's a therapist or anybody else, is vital, right? Because it gets it out of here. It pulls it out. And it's not their responsibility to fix it. It just pulls it out of you.
Right.
And I would imagine with the kids too, just interject, and I want to hear your thoughts on that. With you going in with kids, is that they're probably taught similar things to stuff their feelings, and their emotions and all this stuff but once you could help them realize that they're not alone, that there's probably way more people that are feeling these things. I would imagine that at that point, I mean, the lives that can be saved, the lives that could be changed and impacted by going in and sharing your story and saying, hey, this is, man, I was right there. I didn't do this stuff. Instead, I turned this direction, and this is a result of the actions of stuffing your feelings and numbing out, and coping with drugs and alcohol and these things is 14 years. 14 years, is that right? In prison?
Yes.
I mean, that's a
It's a
lot of
lot.
time.
It's a
It's a
lot.
lot of time to think about your actions. Instead, let me help you. Let me show you that it's okay. I get how you're feeling because I've been there. The power behind that, Sean, is unreal. It's incredible, and I'm so proud of you for doing that for other people, because I know that there's, because of your story and getting emotional and sharing those things, it models to them what to do. So amazing job, man.
Yeah. Well, social media, in growing up or whatever, you realize, you're taught to stuff your feelings, not talk about it. You don't cry, you be a man and don't freaking cry or whatever. And it's just the opposite, man. And, you listen to dads talk to their kids like that and you're like, oh man, it's hard to watch that stuff. The friend of mine that, when the drug addiction, it's different for everybody. But, when I went through that drug program, and I ended up leaving that drug program, unfortunately, while I was in prison still. And I think it was about 4 years out of that drug program. When they let me go, I was scared. Now I'm out of this drug program. I feel like I was in a protected bubble, but, they sent me to a maximum security prison, because they had changed some things in there. The same guy that I helped getting out was the same guy that I lived with in there. And we always got high together, but, I remember at that drug program, I remember he said, hey, look what I got, was some heroin or whatever. He goes, you keep watch for me and then I'll keep watch for you. I said, no, I'm fine. And he just walked in the room thinking to himself, I know he says that now, but as soon as I come out, he's going to go in there. When he came out, I had no interest in doing those drugs. And that was the first time that out of that drug program that I was faced with that situation where I could get high if I wanted to. And you try to tell these kids or whatever, man, if you can stop doing drugs, or not even stop doing drugs, the desire to stop doing drugs, because no matter what, no good comes of it. It's only bad. But you come stronger every time that you're around it and you say no. And no matter what, you're always going to have those friends of yours that are not friends of yours that are always going to try to freaking push it upon you. But the more you say no, the stronger you become.
I want to hit on that. I want to talk about the biology of that. That is powerful, because you're talking about a concept in neurobiology called plasticity, which is the ability of the human brain to develop new neural pathways and strengthen those over time at any age, from birth to death. And here you are. Some people might say, well, I can't do anything because of my addiction. I don't have control over this. But when you establish this new pathway and you stop the old pathway, you stop giving energy to it, it starts to break apart. It doesn't have the same power, but the energy that once went there is now redirected to the new path. And the more you repeat that path, the more it's supported and automated to where it becomes a new behavior and a new pattern, right? It's available to all of us. And I think too many of us get in the space of, I can't do that. We succumb to or feel defeated by whatever's going on in our lives. And then we allow that to defeat us. And at any point we do have a say. But it's realizing that we do have a say, even in the face of something like what you just mentioned.
We've always had the say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just recognizing that stuff.
Today, more than anything, it's, you're playing Russian roulette with your life with these drugs these days. I mean, that friend of mine that, the same guy that, hey, you want to get high? Eventually I'm out, he gets out. And of course, he's a real good partner of mine. I help him out. Give him a place to stay, give him a mattress and, some clothes. Doing really good, got a job. And then, he never went through that drug program with me. But, of course, things get hard for him. And what do you do when it's get hard? You go back to your old ways, because that's what you felt helped you.
Yeah.
So he got right back on heroin. And I remember getting that phone call from his niece. Said, hey, Sean, will you go check on my uncles? I haven't heard from him for a while. And then it dawned on me, man, I haven't heard from him for a while. You know, he used to check in with me. But when I did, I was just shocked, you know, like, you know, it was a whole different person. I mean, it was night and day. And, you know, he's just getting high on heroin. And here's a guy that, you know, all them years being locked up in prison, getting high, you know, wasn't schizophrenia, wasn't paranoid. And now today he's not even the same person, you know, and that's why I ended up doing that video on Facebook. It weighed on my mind. It just broke me down, you know, and it was that video. I got to tell you, after doing that video, you know, you're afraid of the consequences, like, you know, people.
It's vulnerable, right?
And, but doing it, I felt good doing it, but I just thought, you know, whatever comes, you know, if I'm able just to help that one person out of everybody in the freaking world, then you've done something. That's something that I've learned. But what it is, it's Russian roulette these days that you're playing, that people are playing with, you know, if by doing drugs. And people that are in my church, I gotta, you know, these are people that, you know, I'm teaching their kids, you know, they're little babies, you know. And I'm thinking, man, I told Julie, they find out, man, they're gonna freaking, you know, bitch about it and not want me in there. But it was just the opposite, you know. We feel good that you're in there with their kids, but you know, if you would have done this video a little bit sooner, maybe my kid would have been able to see it, and I wouldn't have to watch him being handcuffed and hauled away from prison, or my kid would still be here, he'd still be alive. And those are type of responses that you got when people watch that video. And you know, I'm not saying everything they teach in these rehab places are bad, but they just need to go a little bit further rather than teaching somebody that, hey, relapse is part of recovery and it's going to happen and you're going to come back. It's almost like, hey, you are what you say you are. I'm an alcoholic. You're always going to be that alcoholic. You know, if you want to be something different, hey, I'm not going to be that person that drinks anymore. I'm going to have a beautiful life or whatever. They got to stop saying I'm a drug addict. They got to stop saying I'm an alcoholic, because you are what you are.
And if you repeatedly say it, you become that, right?
Right.
And that's one fault I have with that, that, you know, I won't name the program just in case they get mad at me. Right. But you all know that I am that. No, you're not. You are that if you define yourself as that, but that's not who you are, you know. And I look at you today, Sean, and I hope you'll share that video in the comments with us, because it's powerful. I mean, your experience and you getting out there and being as vulnerable as you are, it speaks to your character and what you're striving to leave as your legacy from here on out. Who cares what happened? You know, whatever happened, but you wouldn't be who you are today if it hadn't happened. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but look at the lessons that you've learned from this and what you're trying to teach other people. It's going to help them prevent. The positive ripple from that way outweighs anything that happened on the negative, right? It's,
you know, doing drugs today, you know, it one or two things. It's going to be prison or death. Before it used to be, you know, like, you know, the nut house, whatever. But yeah, it's prison or death. One of the two is going to happen. You know, talking to those kids, me being in this prison for 14 years, you know, I mean, I've been to Ely State Prison, which is maximum. You go to all these prisons. They're hard, you know, you can't, unfortunately, you can't go in there and do your own time. It is such a hard place. And I remember when I got out, man, after 14 years, I never even held a cell phone. I didn't even know what, you know, you heard of it. It was just all like Star Trek stuff or whatever. But, you know, my sister I used to have her take me to the mall, and I would sit there at the mall in a seat and just watch people walk by. And, you know, because it was really hard, because, you know, I didn't like people walking behind me, because, you know, in prison, man, just one word or, you know, bumping into somebody can turn into a war, you know. And so you just never knew what was going to happen from the next day to the other. And it was really stressful. But, man, I used to have my sister drop me off at the mall just so I could watch women and men, kids walk by me and just get used to being around people, because I had such a social I was in a social imprisonment myself, you know, when I got out, because it was really hard, and nobody should ever have to go experience that. You know, I mean, prison is such a horrible place to freaking be. And unfortunately, like I said, all them years to be asked if I had a drug problem, they knew I had a drug problem. They're not in there to help you, because they don't want to help you. because without you coming back, there is no prisons. They don't want to break the chains on you. Unfortunately, it has to be up that individual to do it, to take them classes and all that. And that's how I feel with some of these rehab places, unfortunately, that, they're not getting to the depths of what's going on with that person. It's just like they're just kind of skipping over it because, like I said, with could you imagine if there wasn't those people to continue to go back to rehab? There wouldn't be any, man. And it just, I just wish that, they really get to the nitty gritty of it, and go and talk to the kids. You realize they're not talking to them. They're not getting to what's really going on, why they're doing those drugs.
Heaven forbid you get healed, because who's going to pay the power bill?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Like that's messed up. If we're truly about healing, let's heal. Let's help people heal. And I think that's where you're at. What we strive to do too is that people they're not having to come back to us. We have people go through our programs, our 12 Journeys programs, and the good news is we don't see them again.
Well, when you're doing the drugs, you are in prison.
We're doing it wrong.
Yeah, when you are in drugs, you're in prison. Regardless, you're in your own prison, and it sucks. There's a you got to realize, being on methamphetamine, being in the garage tweaking and taking apart something, that wasn't fun. You know what I'm saying? In your mind, it was fun. You're getting along, but the things that you did for fun, going off-road 4-wheeling, going fishing, spending time with your dad, your grandma, helping her mow the lawn or whatever, that's what really brought you freaking joy, not doing drugs. And so I'm helping this one gentleman, I can't mention names, but, this has probably been the longest, that he has been off drugs, because, there's nothing keeping it. Sometimes there's nothing keeping it rehab. You can just leave, and so, getting that person back out there doing the stuff that he liked to do, love, and reintroducing them that, hey, man, and like the Secret Secrets. So everything that I was taught, I'm kind of helping that one person. It just makes me realize that, it's not over for some people, even though they think it's over. If you have that desire to, hey, you know what? I want a better life. I want this. You can do it. You just got to let that shit go and move on.
I've got a thought here. Somebody the other day, they were talking about marketing, different deal, but they said to me, people don't want solutions. They don't want the cure for cancer. They don't want that. They want the Jack Daniels. They want the Band-Aid. They want the ibuprofen. That, like Hugh said, they want the coping skills. The problem with coping skills is they are recyclable. They're things that you can use again and again and again. Like you always need Band-Aids. You always need Jack Daniels. You always need, all these things, right, as coping tools. And that's the thing, is they can be consumed again and again. But when it comes to solutions, I think as a society, we've been conditioned not to look for solutions, but coping, right? Like what he just mentioned, we're taught to look for the Band-Aid. And I don't mean this to make us victims of it, but just an awakening to it. Like, let's stop looking for the Band-Aids. Let's stop looking for that ibuprofen, right? Let's figure out what's going on behind it that's creating this whole issue, and let's get at it. That's a big thing to tackle. Do you think it's possible?
I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. Like I said, the program I went through in prison is totally different than what the programs they have out here, or what they're teaching. But like I said, we can always play that victim, it's because of this, and this is the reason I'm doing the drugs or whatever. But it's really comes down to that individual and what that individual wants. Because if there's no desire to have a better life, then there's no desire, but
right. You can't force them.
You can't force them. But at the same time, you can open their eyes and, hey, let's try it this way, But like I said, it's just so hard. The Secrets Are Secrets, I've never even heard that. Nobody's even heard that out here. From this program, a couple of programs I talked about, and holy crap, if you sit there and people have them secrets inside of it and they haven't talked about them and they're just in there, they're just weighing them down and causing a lot of pain, watching those people have those emotions as you sit there and talk, those people are in pain. They need to talk to somebody. And people just really need to realize that, talking to somebody doesn't make make you a bad person, or you're going to be looked down upon or anything like that. And if you cry, it's okay. You know, it's like these, you know, I'm going to fight you. I tell these kids, you know, it's the bigger person that doesn't fight. You know, you're a little kid if you fight. You're a man making good decisions, not fighting, because, you know, it doesn't resolve anything, you know. But talking about your problems does resolve, you know, and unless you do talk about them, it's just going to cause you turmoil in life.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, for one who's speaking from experience, not me, you, you're a demonstration of that, moving from a really challenging start to life, right? People could justify you staying in drugs and say, well, yeah, he's justified. He could, you know, he's justified for what happened and what put him in prison and all that stuff. And there's no hope of him doing anything positive with it because of all that stuff, right? We become victims to it. We become martyrs to it. But you didn't do that. You had this awakening. Somebody said, do you have a drug problem? And you're like, yeah. And you took that and you navigated a really challenging road. I can imagine how hard this has been. It's not easy to get to where you're at right now, but you're an inspiration. Yeah.
Once whatever was hard in your life will become easy. It's not always going to be hard, you know. So I was just, you know, people that are struggling, I said, you know, yeah, it's easy to keep on doing it. It's hard to quit, but guess what? It'll eventually become easy, you know, just like when that guy said, hey, Sean, keep watching for me. Let's get high, whatever. And, you know, I said, no, you know, I just kept on getting stronger and stronger, being around those type of people that were doing drugs, you know, like, man, I got this licked, man, finally, you know, and man, I felt like an accomplishment, you know, a real accomplishment. But, you know, like I said, whatever once was hard for you becomes easy. I got a really bad back. And caused me a lot of pain. You know, sometimes I go to work, I'm crooked, you know, and it hurts to walk. And it caused me a lot of problem in my life. And so what does the doctors do? Man, let's put you on these pain pills, you know, and they had me on these pain pills, and my wife was worried about it because, you know, everybody's addicted to them, you know, and, you know, she didn't want me to go down the wrong path. Yeah. But no matter what, just like drugs, you start taking something and you realize that it's affecting your life. Yeah. You gotta stop. You know, for me, being on those pain pills, you know, before you're taking one, before you know you're on 3, it's affecting my life, you know, right. And you just got to stop, because guess what? There's always different ways you can take care of situations. Ice baths, cold plunge. I get, holy crap, what a miracle thing that was, you know. But, you know, wipes everything away. But anybody that is in a situation where they don't think they can, you just got to strive. You got to want it, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. And be willing to put a stop to the thing that's affecting your life.
Yeah.
Right. Long enough to get good at it. You know, my book, The Art of Accomplishment, that's one of the quotes in there, is in order to get what you want out of life, you got to be willing to suck at it long enough to get good at it. And most of us don't want to do that. Right. And so that willingness to put a stop to the thing that's affecting your life long enough for it to become a new pattern. And it's not willpower. That's the difference here, is you've only got so much willpower. Most people do. It's about a behavioral change, right? It's a different way of thinking. It's who you think you are. It's how that expresses in the world.
Right.
Sean, if you were to say something to the person across the screen from you right now, the person that's watching this, that maybe is in the heat of some kind of addiction, and it doesn't matter what it is, and you and they are having a conversation right here, and you're able to say something to them that could inspire them, what might you say?
You get one chance in life, you know. Well, you get a lot of chances in life, but you got to take what you know and what you want in life and do whatever you can with it. So for me, or helping that one person, is if you're having problems, you go talk about your problems. You know, if you don't talk about it, it's just going to kill you. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to take over. And just like anything, you want to be the one in control. You want to be the one that's making these choices for yourself, because before you know it, if you're not making the choices for yourself, somebody else is. And
Yeah.
that's never a good thing. So take that opportunity, and if you are struggling, go ask for help and talk about your problems. You're only sick as your secrets.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Just expressing those secrets is huge. Thank you for that. Ryan, do you have some thoughts here as you've listened?
Just quick, Sean. I'm you know, somebody that hasn't gone through the level, for lack of a better words, of hard, of heavy stuff. I've been through my fair share of what I call my Everests, Um, but I look at the road that you've traveled, and and then you may feel this way too. Is knowing what you know now, you'd probably not want to go down that same path, but that same path that you've been down has made you who you are, exactly who you are today. Who is Sean that is inspiring other people, that is helping other people to see um, that you can talk about your emotions and your feelings and what's going on, and that there's other ways. You don't have to do what I did. And so, in that regard, I wouldn't change a dang thing. And I'm super grateful, Sean, that you've gone through those things, because you're able to hop on and share them. And hopefully, there's one other person out there, that's watching our show that sees that. Your ripple effect, everybody that you come across is changed for the better. I know that because today we've been fed and we've been changed for the better. And you've shared a lot of nuggets and gold here with us that can absolutely help you shift your life, whether or not you've been through major addiction, or maybe this would keep you out of prison. Maybe you've gone to prison. Maybe this is your wake up call. Maybe you're in a mental prison. Maybe you're in prison inside of here. Y- Let it go. Let it go. Talk about it. Find somebody like Sean. Some of these amazing giants that'll support you, and that let you know that you're not alone in this, and that there is a better way. There's a different way, and you don't have to go to prison. You can choose a different path. So thank you, Sean, for spending the time with us this morning. You've been amazing, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you need to share, Sean, before we wrap up?
Man, I would just say that go out, enjoy life, go do something you haven't done that you love to do, because once you start doing the things that you love to do, it's just forward from there. Just like you said, the what keeps you in prison uh, is doing the things that you don't do, that you didn't do before. And like I said, go fishing. Go on a bicycle ride, go hiking, or whatever, because you're not doing that if you're doing what you shouldn't be doing. Go out there and enjoy life, because I'm telling you, it's beautiful. And like I said, you're only in prison if you allow yourself to be in prison.
I like that.
Truth.
Um, Ryan, I'm going to do something a little off base here. I'm going to show
like it.
my12journeys.com just one more time. Sean, thank you for this. And I will wrap up here. But for those that are watching, you need to come be a part of this community. My 12 Journeys, it's free. We have our community online at Tribe of Giants. We have 4,200 members there. And we're building out my12journeys.com, which is a platform similar to that, where you can share your thoughts, views, all tied to the 12 journeys that we teach from the book, The Giants and the Smalls. And inside of that community, you're going to find everything from exclusive articles to AI applications. And I think the biggest thing is our topic library, which takes videos like this one that we just watched of Sean's, and by category allows you to search different topics so that you can get exactly what you need. So if you're struggling with addiction, we've got videos on addiction. If you're struggling with anxiety or relationship or depression, you can watch videos on that. There's over 700 uploaded videos that we've created since we started this adventure. So you've got AI applications, videos, you've got articles that are all designed to help you start getting this out there, to start expressing it. And so I'd invite you to come be a part of that, because how can you beat that? We're not charging you for this. And it's stuff that's going to help you. Now, there's a potential you might do one of our programs, and heaven forbid you do that, because it might actually help you, right? But you don't have to, right? You can come be a part of our community and really start to transform your life. And Sean, I just want to acknowledge you for what you've been through, for even being vulnerable enough to start sharing your story. I think it's empowering, and I appreciate you. The nugget that I'm taking away today is your darkest secrets, to start sharing those darkest secrets and getting them out, because that's where healing starts to happen. I think it's Rumi that said that the crack is where the light gets in. And there's a point, Sean, like you, where that light starts coming out. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, if it wasn't for me telling my darker secrets, I wouldn't be married to my wife and have my 3 kids.
Yeah, beautiful.
So
yeah, it's beautiful. And you've got an amazing, supportive wife. We're grateful to her. And for those that are watching, we appreciate you and your comments and your sharing of these videos. People that could use this message right here. Share this with them. Tell them about Sean. Sean, do you want people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, if they'd like to get in touch with me and talk, I'd love it. Like I said, I've been helping this gentleman since I made that video, and man,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much joy that would bring to help somebody. Especially somebody that's been through rehab a few times and isn't working. Sometimes trying something else might work. So yeah, reach out.
Do you want them to do that on Facebook?
Yes.
Would it be okay to share your profile?
It would. Yes.
I'm going to put that in the comments here. I hope I've got the right one. Does it have like a Ford Bronco in the picture?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we got you. So if you guys want to follow Sean or become his friend, talk to him, communicate with him, please do that. Please be respectful when we share people's information, but reach out to him and start that conversation. I know he can help you. And Sean, we're grateful for you. For those that are watching, thanks for being a part of our show. Go make it a giant week, and we will see you in the next episode.
All right.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Feel like doing the Ferris Bueller thing, and we're still live. But what are you guys still doing here?
After show.
Go home.
Yeah, go home.
At the end of Ferris Bueller, he does that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, back to your families.
This
Get
is
out
the best ending ever. And Al's comment is permanently on here now because I'm
still there. Thank you guys. We'll see you.
Love you, Giants. Have a good one.